For generations, the system stood. Then everything quietly changed.
They tried to bury the truth.
But the truth survived. Agent for Truth. In theaters now.
One word. That's all it took. Elon Musk quote tweeted a viral post with a single word. That word? Interesting. And suddenly 16 million people are asking questions that have been forbidden for over a century. The post made a simple claim. America had no federal income tax for the first 137 years of its existence. And then 1913 happened. The Federal Reserve Act, the 16th Amendment, and everything changed. But here's what the post didn't tell you and what my next guest is about to reveal. The income tax isn't just unfair. According to a former armed IRS agent, it's illegally enforced. And the proof is buried inside the agency's own files. Now think about what's at stake here. Every April, over 100 million Americans file returns and send money to the federal government because they believe it's the law. They believe there's no choice. They believe the system is legitimate. But what if the enforcement mechanism itself is fraudulent? What if the IRS has been using internal codes and computer systems to fabricate tax assessments that don't actually reflect legal reality? Well, that's exactly what Joe Bannister discovered when he was an IRS Criminal Investigation Division special agent, a man trusted to carry a gun for the agency. He started asking questions. He wrote a 95-page memo to his bosses demanding answers about the legal authority behind income tax enforcement. They didn't answer him. They forced him to resign. Then the feds indicted him, and a jury acquitted him on all charges. Now Elon Musk is shining a light on the same history that Bannister tried to expose decades ago, and the establishment is absolutely terrified. Now, as we break up 2025, as we wrap up 2025, it is time to reflect on the year because uncertainty isn't temporary. It's the world we live in now. Waiting for normal is not a plan, it's a gamble. And for over a decade, my friends at Noble Gold Investments have helped Americans protect themselves by diversifying with gold and silver. You see, nobody knows what 2026 will bring, but one thing's for sure. Real wealth isn't digital, it's physical, it's lasting, and it's yours. So this holiday season, remember the best gift is not under the tree. It's peace of mind. And that's what Noble Gold delivers. So before the year ends, take one smart step towards a safer future and visit nextnewsgold.com for your free wealth protection kit today. Don't leave your future to chance. And if you want one of these, or actually 10 of these beautiful silver coins, holiday coins, silver is skyrocketing right now. Make sure you get in on this. 10-ounce holiday coin with qualified accounts. The number on the screen, 877-646-5347. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. During my interview with Joe Bannister, he told me that when he saw Elon Musk signal boost this message, it gave him real hope for the first time in decades. Because Musk has the reach to do what Bannister couldn't, wake up millions of people with one click. Bannister says the evidence is sitting right there in the IRS own manuals, internal memos, and computer records. He claims agents routinely input codes into an outdated system that fabricate assessments with no lawful bias. And here's the kicker. I recently asked the Treasury Secretary about the very issue at the White House. I invoked Bannister's name, and the response was telling. Because they don't want to touch this. Now, I'm going to show you the actual post first. We're going to show you the post that Elon Musk signal boosted, which is remarkable. And the truth behind this post is wild. There was no federal income tax the first 137 years in America, that America was a country. Everything changed in 1913. Now, this is Brett Pike. This guy is an amazing follow on X. I'm encouraging you to do so, but let's watch the video.
Why aren't schools teaching that there was no federal income tax the first 137 years America was a country? Because there was no legal federal income tax between 1776 until 1913 when they amended or changed the US Constitution. They imposed an income tax for 12 years during the Civil War and in 1894 and 1895, but that was found unconstitutional. It was in the Supreme Court case Pollock v. Farmers Loan and Trust Company, and they struck down the federal income tax. And it remained unconstitutional for another 17 years until 1913, when they passed the 16th Amendment and changed the Constitution. And it has been a little over 120 years since they did that, which means there was no legal federal income tax for the majority of American history. People think that all of these taxes, all of this government intrusion into our lives is the norm, but it is not the norm. This is the norm. This is 1776, and the reason America was the manufacturing center of the world in 1912. America had the largest and most prosperous middle class in the history of the world. American steel, American oil, American automotive. But in 1913, they changed the Constitution, which was the same year that they created a national bank. So right at the same time as they gave the government the ability to reach into our pockets and take our money, they also gave a small group of powerful bankers a monopoly over the printing of the dollar. And they print money out of thin air. They lend the money that they printed to the government, and the government agrees to pay them back with interest using the money that they take from us. And that is why the dollar has been so devalued. That is why you can't afford a house. And it's why college is so expensive. Because for 137 years, America was about prosperity. And since then, it's been about whatever this is. And this is why I wrote a book on...
Now, without further ado, I'm going to present you the interview with Joseph Bannister.
Truth, but the truth survived. For generations, the system stood. Then everything quietly changed.
They tried to bury the truth,
but the truth survived. Agent for Truth, in theaters now.
Elon Musk just dropped a bombshell. He quote tweeted a viral post with one word, interesting. And it explained that there was no federal income tax for the first 137 years that America existed as a country. Everything changed in 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act and the 16th Amendment. That post, you see it here, now has over 16 million views. And my next guest is absolutely ecstatic that Elon is finally paying attention. Joe Bannister is a former IRS Criminal Investigation Division special agent. Say that 3 times fast. He carried a gun for the agency. Then he started asking questions about the legal authority behind the income tax enforcement and wrote a 95-page memo to his bosses. What'd they do? They forced him to resign. The feds indicted him, and a jury acquitted him on all charges. Joe, welcome to the program. When you saw Elon post this, what went through your mind?
Hi, Gary. I was thrilled. Elon has made a lot of expos about the IRS and the income tax. And so I think he definitely gets it. The one component that I think he might be missing, nothing against him, but that he might be missing is that the IRS illegally enforces the federal income tax.
Yeah, certainly does. And this is something that you've been talking about for years. Now, Elon's post simply just said, interesting, to a thread about 137 years without income tax, 16 million views and counting. You've been trying to get this message out for decades. What's your reaction now to seeing the world's richest man signal boosting this message? Does it give you hope?
It gives me great hope, because I really think that the only way that we're going to, get rid of the income tax is if the people make sure that it happens. President Trump, I believe, would welcome getting rid of the income tax, but contrary to the left-wing pundits, he's not a dictator. He would need Congress and everyone to join him in the effort. And I think there's a lot of people who would poison pill an effort like that. But if the people become aware that the income tax is actually illegally enforced, and so in addition to the horrors that the IRS visits upon the American people, if the IRS is actually defrauding the American people, then I think they'd like to know that. And I think if Elon knew that and were to spread that word, we get this income tax gone very quickly.
Well, when I was recently at the White House, that was one of the questions that I asked the Treasury Secretary at a gaggle outside the West Wing. I actually invoked your name, Congressman Paul, Aaron Russo, Sherry Peel Jackson, individuals who have been victimized and also who have been working to expose the income tax, expose the Federal Reserve. So what was your reaction to the Treasury Secretary's response to that question?
Well, I was again thrilled that you were able to even voice the question, because how many people in the media would actually know what to ask him, and have the kind of Gary Franchi presentation to make him ask it. But anyway, it sounded like he kind of confused who the Josephs were. There's the Joseph Ziegler. That's what did a great job in blowing the whistle on the Hunter Biden scam. But I hope that he will recognize that there's a much deeper issue than just the Hunter Biden scam or the way that the IRS, cheats the average American. That this income tax system has actually been illegally enforced for decades, and it's actually breaking the law in enforcing the income tax, defrauding its own computer systems. And the evidence is right there in the IRS's own manuals, its own documents, its own internal memos. And the American people need to know that. I don't think the average government official is going to tell the American people. That's why I'm thrilled that Elon Musk is paying attention to this issue.
Well, let's say that Donald Trump himself is watching this very broadcast, and he's a proponent for the External Revenue Service. Just recently, they were talking about getting rid of the IRS at a cabinet meeting. So it's definitely on the radar of the White House. What is your direct message to Donald Trump, who's watching this right now?
That I know that President Trump has his own reasons for not liking the income tax, thinking that it's just a drain on the American people. And I'm sure that all of his reasons are valid and solid and enough to get rid of the income tax. But I would say that the icing on the cake is that if they look at the internal documentation that comes right from the IRS's own internal workings, they will see that the IRS is actually enforcing the income tax illegally. And the primary way that the IRS does that is by putting fraudulent computer entries into their archaic computer system. And so I'm sure President Trump does not want any kind of fraud in any agency, but the agency that deprives the American people of trillions of dollars every year, if they are illegally enforcing that system, then that's something that I know President Trump would not stand for if he were to know that that's what's actually happening.
Now let's break down the content itself. The Post says that there was no federal income tax for 137 years. I mean, you've seen it, we've seen it. And then 1913 changed everything with the Federal Reserve Act and the 16th Amendment. Quote, America's wealth was built on productivity and stolen by usury. You investigated this from inside the IRS. What did you find specifically?
Well, Gary, I was surprised at, even though I was a certified public accountant and the IRS, trusted me to carry a gun and a badge around. I had a college degree in accounting. And yet I didn't even know that the Federal Reserve Act and the federal income tax were both ushered in the exact same year, 1913. And I also didn't realize that both those systems work together to deprive the people that they're enforced upon of their wealth. And so in this case, the United States of America, a constitutional republic that had been in existence since 1776 and a constitution since 1789, would actually, get to the point where they figure out a scheme to deprive the American people of their wealth, their property, really portions of their lives. Because if someone can tax you 1%, they can tax you, 99%. Whatever you'll put up with.
Well, then you think about what happens when you work for an entire year, and all of those wages you earn during the entire year, that portion that it just goes off to the government, you're basically working for the federal government at that time because they're taking all your money.
Right. And both these systems, the Federal Reserve Act and the income tax in 1913, wasn't some coincidence. Both those systems are joined at the hip. They work together. Brett Pike mentioned about usury and how many decades the federal government, the United States of America, was able to exist quite nicely and quite productively and quite handsomely without an income tax. And in fact, the income tax was declared unconstitutional in the late 1800s, and that's why the 16th Amendment effort came about. But anyway, there's all kinds of Supreme Court cases and truth that's out there. But I think Brett Pike's point about how many decades, over 100 years, over 130 years, that the country did just fine and didn't need an income tax. The American people should learn more about that, and they'll see why we don't need one today either.
Now, Joe, you text me. You were quite excited that the income tax is fraudulently enforced. As soon as you saw that post from Elon, you're like, I'm texting Gary. He needs to know this. And you said it's fraudulently enforced. And you're frustrated that you can't reach Elon to educate him further. If you had just 5 minutes with Elon Musk right now, what would you tell him that the public doesn't know?
Well, Mr. Musk, I would let you know that I have evidence. I worked with Ann Vandersteel, another person investigator who absolutely nails chapter and verse all kinds of fraud that goes on in the federal government, and myself, and then together with Ann more recently, have gathered evidence. Smoking gun evidence that the federal income tax is fraudulently enforced, that the IRS will actually input, IRS agents, not knowing better, will input fraudulent computer codes into their computer system in order to obtain assessments, income tax assessments against the American people. But these computer entries that are input are fraudulent. The entries do not match the reality of the situation of the American person that's being targeted. And in the same way, Mr. Musk, that you found all of the fraud in all the other government agencies, it shouldn't surprise you to know that the IRS, that's been around since 1913, is the king, is the original deep state operation. And you shouldn't be surprised about that once you learn the truth. And I really think that that'll be the icing on the cake if you would draw the American people's attention to this fraudulent administration and enforcement of the income tax, and we can get this thing taken care of, get it pulled out by its roots.
All right, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Patriots, you just heard from a man who carried a gun for the IRS, investigated the system from the inside, and has been acquitted by a jury after the government tried to silence him. Joe Bannister has been sounding the alarm for over 25 years, and now Elon Musk is posting about the very thing that Joe has dedicated his life to exposing. No federal income tax for 137 years. Then 1913 happened, the Federal Reserve, the 16th Amendment, and everything changed. If you want to learn more, visit agentfortruth.com and pick up Joe's book, Investigating the Federal Income Tax, and just drop him a comment, reach out to him. So share this video, folks, and we don't want them to bury it. Share it everywhere right now.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.
For
Bombshell
generations.
after bombshell right there from our friend Joe Bannister. Here's that moment I referenced when I was able to ask the Treasury Secretary a question at the White House, a rather remarkable moment. I'll let you decide if the question was in fact answered.
Can you answer us?
Secretary of Defense,
please?
Two questions.
Secretary of Defense, the late Aaron Russo's America Freedom to Fascism showed Congressman Ron Paul admitting no law requires a Form 1040, yet the IRS targeted folks like Special Agent Joseph Bannister and IRS Agent Sherry Peel Jackson with criminal persecution. With whistleblowers Shapley and Ziegler in Treasury leadership,
Will your team probe IRS fraud, unlawful wage seizures, political targeting of IRS enforcement, and or IRS enforcement of Americans never been made liable?
No, I want to answer this. This is important. And look, Gary and Joe are patriots. They are heroes, and I brought them into Treasury because I found out that they were being, after they came forward in the Hunter Biden whistleblowing scandal, they were being harassed at the IRS. So I brought them into Treasury. They're going to spend a year making sure that that no one's rights are violated, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Then they're going to give me a fulsome report, and they're going to go back and assume leadership positions at the IRS.
Howard Lutnick said on CNBC that
Epic moment right there on the White House lawn. Elon Musk equally with his epic moment, and Joe Bannister with his historic whistleblowing and the risks that he took. Now, let me be very clear about what Joe Bannister told me on the record. He says President Trump would welcome getting rid of the income tax, but Trump isn't a dictator. He needs Congress, and Congress is filled with people who would poison pill any effort to end the system, and that's why awareness is the only weapon. The IRS has operated since 1913. Longer than most federal agencies, extracting trillions of dollars under a system that depends on fear, complexity, and silence. Bannister says if Elon Musk understood what former insiders have documented, the entire structure could collapse under its own weight. And now with one word, that process may have just begun. You see, America existed for 137 years without a federal income tax. We won wars, we built industries, we created the greatest economy the world has ever seen. And then 1913 happened, and everything changed. The Federal Reserve Act, the 16th Amendment, created a system that has extracted wealth from working Americans ever since. Joe Bannister carried a gun for the IRS. He believed in the mission. Then he followed the evidence, and the evidence nearly destroyed him. He wrote the memo, they forced him out, they indicted him, and a jury said not guilty. Now, Elon Musk has put this question in front of 16 million people with a single word and the tap of just one button. The conversation has escaped confinement. So here's my question for you. Do you believe the income tax is legally enforced? Yes or no? Let's have a conversation about this. And if you want to wear your stance on your sleeve, check out the Next News merch shop. It's linked in the description.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now. You know out.